And we are live. So, hi, good evening again, everybody. Welcome to the Artist Talk for Reimagined, Unspoken Bodies and Spaces. My name is Katherine Kennedy. I'm an artist and a writer, and I'm just going to be leading the discussion with the three artists in the show. And, we want it to feel like a conversation. Feel free to, raise your hand, ask questions, and we're looking forward to hearing more about the work of these three great artists. So I'm just going to introduce the three of them briefly. So Akilah Watts in the middle. Hey, Akilah Watts is a Barbadian contemporary artist who received her bachelor's degree in studio art in 2017 and went on to participate in Prism Art Fair that same year. She works with a number of media, including drawing, painting, mixed media, sculpture, as well as high and low relief paintings. Akilah has exhibited locally in a number of group exhibitions and hosted her first solo show in March 2019. She's also exhibited internationally in Miami and Romania, and has been featured in online exhibitions, auctions, articles, and shops such as Lazy Lays and Ebony Art Spot. Akilah has been featured in a few local publications such as the Easy Magazine and M People Magazine, and internationally online on True Gallery and Lazy Lays. She's currently working on multiple bodies of work, one of which focuses on her relationship with natural hair and her Caribbean roots, and another entitled Trapped in Paradise is her way of exploring ideas of her island as paradise. So Anna Gibson is a Barbadian contemporary artist, who explores multiple mediums, crafting images of body manipulation through realism and expressionism. She has been practicing for over 5 years, completing her bachelor degree in fine arts in 2017. Her artwork centers around exploring and exposing vulnerabilities women have about their differences to each other and how they seek to physically mask or morph their bodies to achieve acceptance within their cultural, racial, and social environments. The most recent artworks are crafted around the evaluation and comparison stage of your physical image, each angle taking advantage of the mind's and body's vulnerable disposition, while emphasizing these self-inflicted processes of metamorphosis using harsh and soft combinations of drawing and painting, and exaggerating shapes of perceived abnormality. Alanis Ford is a contemporary Barbadian artist who specializes in expressionistic realism and portraiture. She works mainly with oil paint and collage. Alanis attended Barbados Community College and obtained her bachelor's degree in studio art. She's been in a number of group exhibitions, including Vermont Studio Center and at the Barbados Museum and Historical Society, and the Crane Gallery in Gallery of Caribbean Art, and a few other non-conventional spaces. Ford has just completed her second residency at the Chautauqua Institution of Visual Arts program in New York. She has been featured in publications such as Sugarcane Magazine and Barbados Today. In the years she's been creating, Alanis's concepts are based primarily on the Black female identity in an idealized, exotic Caribbean space. And through her proxy, she navigates life through paradise. So welcome to all three of you, and thank you very much for putting this show together.
Thank you for having us.
So I can start with a nice, easy question that just has to do with how the three of you came together to form this sort of collective in a way. I know that you all graduated from Barbados Community College the same year in 2017. And, was that kind of the start of your artistic relationship? And did it then grow after the college you continued working together? Or did you have any pre-existing relationships?
As I thought you was like a layoff door.
Well, hi, good night, everyone. Thanks for coming. Me and Akilah, we went primary school together, and then Anna and Akilah went secondary school together, and we all met at college. Our first piece was actually a tiny little painting for a tutor that was like retiring, and that was our first collab. And you can continue.
I was like, now you say this in such a clear, succinct way, but it was basically a collab piece for a teacher that was retiring. And so it was a combination of like all these schools that she would have taught at through her year. And then eventually somebody in the office kind of saw the piece and was like, y'all want a mural?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how we start the business that we have together, which is 3D Design Studios as well. And I think that is what was the jumping point for us. So the first mural we would have done would have been at St. John's Primary School. And then it kind of just went from there. And if I think that, yeah, all right.
And I mean, do you see yourselves as a art collective in that traditional sense? You know, like in terms of you have these kind of like set goals, or has it just been this kind of organic collaboration that developed?
I can say it's a little bit of both. I don't think I really saw us as a collective until this year, until Ashley, who did our critique, and you mentioned it. To be honest, I think it just comes so natural for us to be together.
Right.
These men, I don't want to say it's a joke, but we sisters by choice.
Right.
So it comes so naturally to like work together and to bounce ideas off of each other that I don't see it necessarily as like a hard thing. So I didn't really see it necessarily as a collective. It just is what it is.
And it was like organic too, so like it wasn't intentional.
Right. It's just
Until like when we started business, like, we should make a business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it
We
just
should register this. You know what I mean? We want to do like
Yeah.
other things under the name of our business as well. So we thought like, you know, just so we make it official.
right.
Yeah.
It just started to make sense.
Yeah.
And in terms of planning this show, is this your first major kind of contemporary group show together?
Yeah.
Mhm. Definitely.
And how did, you know, what were the kind of conversations you had around planning this show? Because it's kind of there's this interesting shared thread that you all have where you're looking at, you know, the female form and these kind of intimate moments. But this is Unspoken Bodies and Spaces, which I thought was interesting because when you think about Caribbean households, there's this kind of, you know, like there's a level of privacy and house proudness about like drawing back the curtain on certain things that people don't talk about. So how did you guys come up with this concept and how do you see the works playing into it?
I think the work just that came together naturally, because we didn't really look, okay, we have to create this type of work for the show.
Mhm.
We just created a body of work individually and then we put all together and then we curated. But this one was like the collaborative piece. We were like, okay, we have to do a collaborative one to tie everything together. And
I'm so nervous because shoving this money for back in the head every chance we get.
Don't be nervous.
But basically, what Alanis said is true. We are always like constantly working. So I don't think we went out with the intention of, yes, we got to create these pieces so that they fit together. I think naturally from bouncing ideas off of each other and having conversations, our work already speaks to each other. So it was a little bit organic, natural to have a show together. And people have been asking me for years, Heather specifically, been asking us for years, when y'all doing the show? When y'all doing the show? And like, we were going to do it last year, but then obviously COVID, and then this year again, COVID, and then the volcanic ash hit, and it was just continuously push and push. So to be honest, like the word that you see in the show now probably would not have even been in the show last year. So I mean, it was a blessing and a curse because it gave us time to develop our work a little bit more too. You probably wouldn't have seen half the things that you're seeing now.
No pressure, we get into you, Anna, don't worry.
Same question.
So another thing in terms, you know, you said this is about your interrelationships with one another, but your work also uses a lot of tropes and imagery that speaks to like a much wider, Caribbean and, you know, to narrow it down, Barbadian experience. So Akilah, I wanted to start with you with an individual question. So your work, of course, it stirs up a lot of nostalgia through the use of patterns, foods, hairstyles, imagery, and all of these things are very easy for us to relate and kind of transport us to a different kind of mindset when we see them. And there's a sense of comfort and pride you feel as well. I think, you know, you see some of them, but then on the other side, you know, you're also we're kind of looking back as unreliable observers. We have like rose-tinted glasses when we look at our memories of certain things. So can you talk about how your use of memory and nostalgia draws attentions to like more nuanced readings of the Caribbean and maybe some issues that underlay these things that at first make us feel comfortable?
I assume you're talking about the Beautifully Braided series, which is the hair stuff.
Beautifully braided, and I have to say I love the piece there with the hot walls. I mean, that just took me right back to the canteen at school. I'm not gonna lie, you know. And there's just these familiar kinds of nostalgic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I gotta go back to talk about how the whole series kind of started because I was dealing with a lot of cultural symbols and imagery while I was in school finishing like my bachelor's. And then I was just like, you know what, let me just paint some hair stuff to kind of like relax and not have to be thinking like, why are you using this shade? Why are you using this color? Like basically explaining every single decision I make about my art. And then once I left school, I was like, honestly, both topics could be be tied into one to be a stronger concept. So this series is kind of how like that came out of that development, basically. Like I wanted to combine something that was familiar with something documentary based, almost like. So it's like I wasn't necessarily they're hiding or they're blinded to the truth. I wanted to remove the faces because I don't want you to necessarily relate to the people in like, okay, she went to this school, I went to this school sort of situation. Is more environmental based. Like what feeling do you get when you see these pieces? What connection do you have with them? Because obviously everyone that looks at a piece will not have the same hair or will not have had experiences with the vegetation or fruit, but each piece has something for everybody.
Right.
And then it was last year that I think I developed the Moments from My Island Home series, which is an expansion on the hair pieces. So I started to look at the patterns, less like a pattern or a fabric and more as an adaptation of the skin, almost looking at it as the people of the Caribbean becoming a product for consumption. So like when tourists possibly come here, they look at us as a yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. We're not necessarily the individuals that we've been raised to be. We're more something, a product, if you will.
I mean, and that idea of consumption, before I have another question for you about kind of the mixture of the broader Caribbean context versus a very personal kind of edge to your work, like bloodlines, and when you have these ID pictures that are all, you know, these very individuals named after people with dates and so on. But since you mentioned consumption, I had a group question for all of you because consumption is a theme that comes up over and over again in all three of your practices, both in title and in theme. So I wanted you to maybe let us know more about your thoughts about consumption from two sides. So as the Caribbean being consumed, but also what are we consuming as Caribbean people and how that feeds into what you make?
I think from our standpoint, I think we are consuming a lot of the English-speaking Western world, and we are losing a lot of, again, this sort of imagery, and that's why I thought it was important to have it documented, because I think even in agriculture, as different plants are cultivated and they change, you won't see the same species in another 10 to 50 years. So I want it to be a reminder of that almost. It's almost like I put a pause on our culture, kind of trying to get it, what's the word I'm looking?
So into like a time capsule.
Documented, encapsulated, all the different things before it's too late.
Right.
So somebody will be able to look back on it and be like, yeah, I remember this. Because even to this day, like, yeah, we've even been through enough years that we know like tea time crackers don't even look the same no more.
Right.
Pills don't look the same anymore. Shirty biscuits don't look the same anymore. So when we have our own kids, they probably may not even have a shirty biscuit that look like ours, or they may not have shirties at all.
What?
You know what I mean? So for them to look back and have that, I think is important, and not just using the imagery of the palm tree and the witches to define what the Caribbean is.
So the more personal kind of aspects.
I think I kind of explained our part, like who's consuming us a little bit before, so I'll just transfer.
I think mine in terms of consumption is the more looking at like the foreign gaze consuming my figures, myself. And what I do is, especially in this series back here in Chocolate Gaze series, is like a conversation between different gazes. So like the proxy and the gaze of the male, the gaze of the foreign, my gaze, the gaze of the environment she's in. So I think in terms of, I think it's stretching it a bit in terms of consumption because I don't really think of that when I'm creating, but it's just like multiple conversations happening at once. And Anna got anything to say?
Come through, Anna.
This was actually what worked.
For my pieces, I guess, my girls mainly consume materialistic things. Like that's their main focus, looking at different things they can buy and add to themselves in order to become whole or become a new version of themselves. So in that sense, it's all about pulling on all these different things that you keep buying and using for adornment and whatnot. So in that way, it will connect to my work.
So I'm just gonna jump back to Akilah again with that question about the very like personal, almost familial side to your work as well. So you have these time capsules and these largely relatable images, but I mean this is a self-portrait here. Do we have in the bloodlines? Is it
I would say a family
a
portrait.
family portrait?
So it's a piece that has me, my father, and my brother.
Mhm.
Obviously, you wouldn't know my father and my brother because you don't know them.
Mhm.
And their skin has been removed
Right.
and adapted to be patterns again. But in some of these pieces that are based on the family photos, I'm also looking at what's the word I'm looking? The conditioning of children through cultural and familiar norms, like how, again, being prepared for the outside world, just the don't do that, don't do this. I think as kids we have like this free spirit, this free will before we learn like right and wrong, and even like the fire hot and these sort of situations, we have more of a freedom in that thought process. So it is looking at a kid or me specifically almost adapting to my skin as I grow older. So then there's another piece becoming the product. So there's another piece, I think the first one I did with me, it was me and my brother, and my skin is actually adaptation of his. So I have not even found out what my skin is going to be as yet. It's almost like how children copy things that they see. You know what I mean? Even though my skin is becoming a product for consumption, it's still not the product that I'm going to be when I'm finished.
Right. And in terms of product and how we kind of mold ourselves and see ourselves, as a nice transition into Anna and Anna's work. Because, I mean, your pieces, Anna, they evoke a very visceral reaction, I would say, when you see them. You see, these very, it looks painful to look at, like when you see these, what women are doing to their bodies, specifically Black women in this context, and the measures that they're taking to conform to this like ideal that exotifies and sexualizes women. But I mean, amidst how in pain you must be to do these things, there's a kind of an assertiveness and confidence in the stance of many of the women that you paint as well. So I just want you to talk a little bit about that, like that push and pull between having agency in your own skin and your own body and your choices versus feeling bound by external expectations and standards.
Well, with these, it's always from the perspective of kind of them looking at themselves. So even though yes, the other is looking at them, it's always from a personal point of view. So I did look in the mirror. They're trying to exude confidence that they're trying to gain through doing all these different things, and then I could see beyond the different scarifications, the different things that pulling at them, the scars, the different plasters and whatnot, and seeing what they on the journey to become. Right. But hence why they still have on the lingerie and the underwear and stuff. They still is that adornment and sexualizing themselves in a way to feel confident.
And I mean, I think you can see that as well, that kind of duality or layeredness through some of the titles of your work. Like I know you have a series called Rebirth. And I mean, to me, Rebirth, it sounds like this kind of new, fresh, it has a really positive connotation, which, as you say, kind of matches yet doesn't match what these women are doing, because they might feel that they have been reborn, but as a viewer, we also are seeing a more painful side to it. And this piece here specifically I wanted to talk about, it's called Rebirth Metamorphosis. And I mean, I think it seems to be a bit different from some of the others, just like the color palette is different. You're using flowers and organic imagery in it. And the focus is kind of less on the sexualized aspects of the body. So I wondered if you could talk more about this piece and its situation in that series.
With these series and all of them were going through a type of transition, like a metamorphosis in itself, becoming into something new. Whereas with this particular series, I started focusing, kind of dialing back and going back into like the mind, like how you viewing yourself after all of these different changes, and kind of revisiting what the mindset would be after you more or less become perfect.
Right.
So with that one, I started to look at the story of narcissists and the flowers that kind of grew, the narcissus flowers, the daffodils that grew after he fell into the water, being so obsessed with himself. So I kind of been taking that as inspiration for my next journey with this series in terms of like exploring like a more fantastical idea of rebirth and becoming a new person, kind of breaking down different mental aspects of ways we might seek to change ourselves in the first place.
Right. And speaking of journeys and traveling, Alanis, I mean, I feel like your works in this show, they act almost like very, very straightforwardly as a travelogue, as this character, you know, and like you're seeing her traveling to this island, and you know, there's this range of different emotions that bubbles your persona that she goes through, and she sees the island. So we're seeing her kind of exhausted, curious, hesitant, you know, and then even like kind of empowered by the time you get to this piece that's behind you. So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about this journey that Bubbles has gone through, and also your use of self-portraiture within your works and that transformation into an alter ego or another person.
Well, like the basis of my work is self-discovery, and what I'm looking at is like what it means to live in a paradise space, like a space that others vacation or like escape to. And I did them through these proxies, like these blue dotted figures. And the first one I ever created was named Bubbles. And she has like blue hair and like red lips. And there's multiple conversations happening, as I said earlier, like between me and her and the space she's in. And for this series called Arrival, is about, I'm looking at the ocean as like this baptism, like this like birth, like like you go in one thing, you come out another kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
What was the question? Like, like going off topic.
Yeah, no, I mean, keep going. I mean,
so
just that kind of transformation from you into Bubbles, and
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I see my proxies as myself, and I also see them as their own entities. And I think I flip between them a lot, especially like for these ones where it's like just the mask kind of thing. So like a hybridization is starting to happen between us. And usually when that birth or that transitioning is happening, I'm wearing this dress in particular. It's almost like a uniform. Yeah, and I'm starting to like experiment with glitter, and like I like the idea of using glitter because it looks different at different angles. So like it's creating illusions, which I'm trying to do with these like landscapes that I'm creating, like almost like a mirage kind of thing, especially in this piece.
Yeah, because I was gonna speak about this piece as well. I guess in this piece, you know, the uniform is off, but you are fully transformed
Right.
into Bubbles, and it's interesting because even though like she's kind of standing almost confidently and proud within this piece, she's also simultaneously camouflaging into the background. So I don't know what your thoughts were around that. Kind of, the more you become Bubbles, how
The more I become the background kind of
Yeah.
thing. Well, Bubbles in particular, you know, my character depicted here, they originated from my portfolio where in college. I was looking at dancehall queens and like their, you know, freedom and their sexuality. And so for this one, I wanted to like embody her characteristic and look back at the dancehall queen and the way they pose and the way they're like so free in their self. And I wanted to, I don't know if I was like consciously, you know, making her disappear. Maybe that's me doing it, but she's fighting against it. So maybe that's that conversation happening, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and you mentioned dancehall and this kind of embodying a persona, and I think that to an extent that's something that all three of you are doing. You're kind of, there's this performative aspect to your work, with, you know, there's like glitter or glamour and, you know, makeup and masking. So I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you see like the use of masquerade and performance. Like, is it you know, in some cases it seems like armor, almost like a defense mechanism, and in other cases it seems to be revealing some vulnerabilities. So if all three of you could just speak to that.
Yeah, I think I use the blue dotted figures like armor in a way, like something to hide behind. Because as I said earlier, like I see them as their own, but I also see them as self-portraits. So I am not really like a very like, you know, out there kind of person. So I want to do self-portraiture, but I don't always want to use my face. So that's, you know, that's the way for me to do it without, you know, hey, it's me, my face kind of thing.
So it's revealing a vulnerability and it's providing protection.
And I can't hide behind it.
I think the masquerade thing to me is, I think it's the perfect word, to be honest. Because when I was finishing bachelor's again, I was looking at Barbadian symbols and stuff. So I was looking into a lot of folklore like Mother Sally and the Stiltman and the Shaggy Bear and stuff like that. So masquerading is a big part, I find, of Barbadian culture and the Rococo culture. So I find that it's a perfect word for this person. And I think everybody masquerades in their own way, even just not putting on a mask and a costume. You masquerade every day. When you put on your voice for your boss, and you put on your different voices for your customers and such and such and such. We put forward something at the front that is not even us. I think my work explores the way in which the outside world views us. I think as more and more pieces come out, there we exploring a little bit between the difference of how you see yourself versus how the world sees you.
Well, within my work, I guess it kind of comes back to the same question you had before about it was not body, but the idea of
Just a
yeah, my assumption.
and like the confidence you have when
Right.
you change
But their
yourself.
mask is kind of
Right.
the different things that they have all over them, and also the expressions and stuff
Right.
that they exclude is the mask or masquerade and playing on, they're playing on a show for themselves as well as the world.
Right.
So
So I want to talk now, this is another all three of you discussion we're going forward in, because this piece here, Beautiful Captives, I mean, this is kind of figuratively and literally the centerpiece of your show. You know, you come in, your eye is drawn to it, and this is a very personal, intimate collaboration that you did. So I mean, I have a lot of questions about how you came forward to decide like this is the kind of collaboration we want to do. You've collaborated on murals and more commercial work, but this, seems like a big departure from that. So just how you guys felt, and then I'm gonna ask some questions about the actual process.
How we felt about the collaborative.
I mean, it kind of just came natural. It felt like doing the show kind of pushed us to actually go through with it. And everything comes so natural. It was like, all right, we can start with like an image of ourselves and, kind of approach it and we would our individual work. And then from there on, it was just an organic process of putting everything together and just studying the competition and whatnot.
I think it was similar to doing our regular murals. Well, this time we had way more say in what we were doing. Because when we do murals for other people, they are who decide what they want to have on their walls. Well, this one we had a little bit more input in how we were going to pose, why we were posing this way, and such like that. So I find that I would say it was a challenge, but not in a bad way. I think it was, we wanted to take this challenge in that like we wanted to do something collaborative that was not based on other people's thoughts and images, and we wanted to go from our own perspective and our own work. So that's kind of how it came to be. It was like, man, let me just do a collab piece, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We got a collab.
Felt like that step.
You know what I mean? Like, we don't work, we got some time. If they talking about it for a little while, let me go on.
Nobody doing
Like,
anything.
why not?
I mean, and it was fun because sometimes when you're working on your own stuff, it's like you could be stuck with it for a long time, and sometimes it starts to look ugly, so you got like, put it to the side and not, But for this piece, we was like, okay, let me put our names in a hat and pull out one, and whoever you get, you got to pick. Yeah, and then we got it right on, like, it was kind of like perfect on the first try, because I pull out Akilah, she you pull out Anna and Anna pull out me. And so, okay, we're gonna paint each other in our own styles. And we was like, we don't know what was in the background at first. You know, the background was the hardest part about this. And I was like, we have to put glitter because, you know, glitter is my thing now. So, like, you know, you gotta put glitter. So, yeah, we ended up being lucky with, you know, the framing and everything. And it was like, put this in the middle. And we don't care what we're gonna fit on the side, it gotta be in the middle.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a starting point. But I mean, so because so much of all your work again is looking at the gaze, right? How did you feel turning the gaze on each other to like literally turn out your styles into one another? I mean, was it comfortable? Was it uncomfortable?
Not yet. Nobody makes it start. I think for me, or from my perspective of it, I found that the styles that we use, because again, I have multiple styles that I could have used. I think majority of the styles that we used was again a mask. So when we was looking inward, we had fun almost playing. Like we playing dress up, we got costumes. Because Alanis don't look like that, I don't look like that, Anna don't look like that. You get what I mean? Like, yes, you can see certain features that points it out to be us, but the style image that each one is painted is in a style of costume. They're masks. So I don't think it was too hard to be like, oh my goodness, like, is this really reflecting what I think about them? Certain situation. I think it was that. It was more using us as a subject to transfer a different message. Ready that?
It was pretty fun actually to like edit her body according to
So
I mean, doing the pose wasn't that fun, but
I mean, it wasn't too bad actually. But I had a lot of fun with adding on to shade and whatnot. So that was probably the best part for me.
yeah, I mean, we just have people that be like, you could go further, you know, we say push each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, man, I'm bossy big. I'm like, Alanis, aren't you back? Aren't you back? Please, girl, you have proper photos.
Right. Don't worry, Anna can sort you out. And I have a question coming in from the YouTube chat
Yay!
which is a reminder to everybody watching at home, please put your questions in the YouTube chat.
Please.
So this is coming in from Donna Haynes. Beautiful girls, so proud.
Thank you.
Question: how has it been, in your opinion, as a trio? Do you feel that you are compared to one another? And if so, how do you all deal with that? And that's an interesting follow-up from...
Ooh, that's a nice question.
It is.
I feel like people compare us, but we don't compare ourselves. So
Which
then,
is the most important.
I feel like it's flight right over the head when people compare, to be honest. I mean, yeah, like, because me and Anna get compared to a lot of things because we're similar in complexion and our hair. So, like, and especially with the masking going on now, like, some people can't recognize your features based on your eyes. Like, I had to do a job on my own, and the guy was talking to me, like, we knew each other. I was like, yeah, you talking about Anna. She's always on the job previously. But I don't think it's when people compare us, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. They usually ask us a lot if we're sisters.
Right.
Like, either we by ourselves or we by ourselves or y'all by yourselves, it's usually a question that comes up a lot.
I mean, I although our work goes well together, especially like when we had to create this show, we realized how well, you know, things look next to each other, et cetera. People, I don't think we have ever been compared to our face. In terms of like,
So let's say
yeah.
Right.
yeah, and we try to be very supportive of each other, and you know, I would always send them like beginning stages, be like, oh, this look, should I do this kind of thing. So I don't think we got like any like, you know, malice in our heart towards each other, but you know, a rising tide floats all ships kind of thing. So if she succeeds, I succeed, and I gotta make sure that she succeeds kind of thing, you know. So yeah.
I just have one more question, then I'm going to open it up to the audience here, and we have a couple more coming in from online as well. But my last question is about the curation of the show, actually, and how, you know I talked to you all a little bit about the process already. You said that, you know, you printed things out, you moved things around, you figured it out. So I want to ask about that curatorial process, and also the digital kind of, what did I call it? So yeah, the virtual replica of the space that you did online. And I was wondering if that was like a direct response to COVID, you know, for all the people that maybe can't come and see the show, or if that was kind of a natural direction for you to take as well.
I think the curation was probably easier than we thought it was going to be. Because we have been working together for 9 years now. And we approached it like how we did murals. So like I could tell Akilah thinking about Akilah saying anything. So like, I know she don't like that next to that. You know. So we printed them out small and we tried to keep the sizes accurate. We created like makeshift walls and then we put everything. The hardest part was taking stuff out because we had a lot of work. So it was like, we can't use this. It's like, no. So that's why you see some stuff over there because like, we have to put it in.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm giving y'all the sharp version. I was like, this curatorial process was not easy for this first. I think the final product for it was easy, but we went through the whole process. Obviously, with COVID going on, we couldn't come into the shop and just place things on the wall and figure it out. We went through a whole process of almost creating like an Excel sheet. So I was sending them, I was like, we need to go and measure the walls so we know how big the walls is. And I tried to send out like a PDF with all of our artwork sized in relation to others so that they could like kind of play around with how the space was going to be. So almost like all three of us had our own time playing around with each other's artwork and seeing how we wanted things to go. But then as we were left outside, just kidding, as the outside was open back up to go back outside before curfew and stuff was put in place, we kind of just set out on the floor like these 3 watercolor sheets of paper and Anna printed out like a whole set of miniatures and the artwork and we like cut them out and was like just playing around. I was like, yeah, nah, I don't like that, I don't like this. And then the good thing was that we was kind of at my house when we did it, so we at least had a few of the art pieces to visualize, kind of like, okay, with that working for sure, we could actually see size reference. And this one was probably like the easiest one to do. So we did this one first, and then everything kind of flowed naturally because obviously we knew this one had to be centered. And then this one came, and then everything kind of flowed after that. I think I'll let Anna answer the curatorial question, and then we'll get back to the virtual exhibition portion.
I mean, basically everything already. Because to me, it wasn't too hard. It was just a lot, fast to leave from work.
Yeah.
That's anything. But it was bad.
Mhm.
It's pretty good.
The virtual process. Now, I think it was something we were talking about for a while. Anna actually had found the website Art Steps, and then I was like, well, let me add Zoe, who is the creator of Mahogany Culture. I was like, Zoe, come on, you've been doing all these VR, like, what's the easiest software? And she gave me the same one, so I was like, all right, at least I can still play around with this one, knowing that it's an easier one to start with, especially not knowing what the heck I was doing when it comes to virtual exhibition. But as I played around with it, it was easier than I thought it was going to be. But I think we wanted to do it because we have collectors overseas and people overseas that support us. And then with the volcano ash, I think that just solidified us wanting to do it because there are people with respiratory issues that would not be able to come out to the show. So we wanted to present it virtually as close as possible to what it looks like in person, so people still get that experience.
I've got some more questions from online, but I'm going to open it up to the audience first and take a couple in person now. If anybody has questions for the 3As.
Or we need to think somewhere.
And well, y'all think that's fine because I have some here. So I have one here from Ada M. Patterson. This is for Anna. The figures in your work seem situated in pain. How would you respond to the idea that you might be reproducing harm against the bodies of the women in your work? And how do you reconcile that? This kind of as a self, like harming themselves in order to perpetuate this.
I mean, yeah, that is the main focus of it, and it is kind of perpetuating that. But I also feel like there's a reality of kind of where we're in right now. So it's basically just a documentation of what is at the moment. Even though I do want to move on to something a little more uplifting, but I don't think it's necessarily detrimental to the imagery already out there.
Right. And I have one from Ada as well for Alanis. So do you think bubbles could ever appear outside of the frames of paintings and images in more embodied forms like a performance, or is it important for bubbles to stay sealed within the image?
I have been thinking about doing an installation like in a gully, painting my body and bring her to life. But in terms of performance, I don't think I got the guts to do that kind of thing. But you don't want to do it for me, you know, I can hit you
Got you,
up.
got you.
All right, we got
It could be a
collaborate.
collaboration.
Right, all right. I also have a question here from Jaden Ward. A question for all three of you. What countries have you not visited but would like to visit?
Ooh, Alanis, because you always pressure in the travel question. So you should start with that. Where we want to go?
Everywhere.
London before we 30.
Well, we won't go back to Italy.
Talk about 30s.
So sorry.
We want to do, yeah, we want to go, you know, different countries in Africa. We want to go everywhere. We want to see everything. We be young. We still got time. But if COVID behaved, then, you know, we could go.
If COVID had behaved this year, we would have been in Miami in December last year,
Yeah.
to be honest. Because we went to New York year before and we was like, let me just make this a once a year thing, you know? And then we were going to hit up Miami Art Week and then it was like, you thought. So I think maybe possibly Miami might be the next one.
Okay.
Maybe December.
Maybe December.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Don't blight us again. Fingers crossed. Right, anybody specific?
I'm gonna go everywhere. I love to go back to London again.
London?
I feel that we didn't fully get it.
To explore it, yeah.
As much as we wanted to. London, and
Anybody in the audience? Hi, Therese.
Hi, Katherine. Hi, Rose. I think I might have asked you before, but I feel compelled to ask you again. There's a great preoccupation with the gaze, the foreign or the male gaze. That seems what you're all sort of defending yourself against. And yet, when we see your collective self-portrait, you are still, in a way, hiding behind these performative identities. So is there, as much as you seem to be implying that the male other or the foreign other cannot truly know you, it's almost as though you're saying also that we are not knowable. We are. Is there a comfort in this performative identity as well? Is it that you do not want to be known? I did hear your explanation, but it doesn't seem to me that you are not asserting something else than what it is you think they think about.
Right. I think I would say I answered this question, but I touched on it a little earlier with the idea of exploring this series a little bit more. We'll be examining the way we see ourselves versus the way others see us. So I think it's a developmental process. Like right now, I agree with you in terms of the gaze being focused on what other people see. So I think as the work continues and we continue to explore, we will look more less at what people think of us, and more of what we want to portray and what we think of ourselves. Or me specifically. They have to speak on their work.
Well, I started this work like a year old. I mean, it progressed pretty quickly, but especially after reading your critique, I was not consciously doing it. But it is something I want to explore and you know, I don't know if it's something deeper within myself that I'm hiding, or maybe I do question all the time, am I like starting to perpetuate the same imagery and stereotypes? So like those are questions that I do want to like explore and research some more and move forward from. But not to, you know, get the excuse that it's just a year old, but it is a year old.
I'm sorry not to cut you off. You finish. I think that is why we asked you to critique as well, because we wanted an outside opinion. Because I mean, it's only so far you could get with hearing the same opinions over and over. Yes, that helps you develop, but you need outside voices. So we were feeding off of each other, yes, and we obviously can give each other honest opinions, but it's only so far we can go as well because we know each other. So we wanted an outside person to come in and be like, honestly, this is what I'm seeing. Is this what you meant? Do you want to push it a little further? So honestly, thank you for questioning our work and for giving us something to think about, because we can only grow from there.
Sorry, maybe a little bit less relevant for you actually, because you're not, I mean, I don't think your figures are particularly performative. But then I would ask you, which I think I did ask you in writing as well. There is this question of perpetual victimization. You know, is there any way, any hope that they can also, in some sense, also turn around and say, I'm going to take charge now, and I'm not going to be, you know, the victim or the object or the respondent to all these desires?
Yeah, in a sense, they are kind of taking charge in their own way, even if they don't realize that, they are somewhat confident in their changes. Like, it's a natural human process of change and work, even if you're not physically working, kind of try to evolve yourself all the time. So in that sense, they are somewhat taking charge of it. But I do want to move on in terms of like creating a kind of like a more fantastical space that I feel like we as women can kind of look forward to as well, in terms of like and celebrating our bodies and our naturalness instead of like simply just going through change.
I mean, like, it does raise the question of like what is agency and empowerment. You can't, I guess you can't say what that is to another person, even though we can look and we can say this looks very painful. If they're looking in the mirror and feeling good about themselves, there's a lot of layers to it, because it might be coming from negative influences, but you can't prescribe what empowerment is to another person. So I have another online question from Ada for all three of you. Could you tell us a bit about the artists that have inspired you in your work?
Well, for me, one of the first artists I think that I've inspired is probably Johnny Sabo. And from there, I had another Caribbean artist that I looked at a lot during school, during ACC days, Shoshana Weinberger. She did like this pinup series with like a more satisfied type of version, using different adornments and whatnot. So she's another one that I really like at the time.
I have three. I would have to say Jory Manea. She's a Dominican, she's a New York-based artist of Dominican descent. There's also Mauro Descent, who's a Haitian, Haitian derived artist based in Miami. And then there's Nugent Smith. And all three for different reasons. Because Nugent, while he does do a lot of mixed media pieces and stuff, he is kind of who I look to and who I introduce people to when they're interested in looking at performance art. I think he approaches it in such a way that it is groundbreaking and understandable and not necessarily too abstract to be going over too many people's head. And then Marl I look at for three-dimensional stuff. He is looking at colorism and all these different things from Black people based in his works, which are made of porcelain. And then there's Jory, whose work I was looking at since I was in college. Her work deals a lot with the Caribbean and the idea of those prints that are more traditional to represent like the Caribbean. So like the shirts, kind of like these shirts that you see as tourist shirts, not necessarily the Hawaiian ones that have like the hibiscus on it, but the ones that we see that are literally just like sceneries with like the black silhouetted palm tree and you have Barbados written across it. Like I was like thinking in my head, I was looking at that sort of imagery before I knew about her work, because obviously I would have been looking in abeds for different fabrics that represented the Caribbean sort of thing. And then when I saw it in her works, I was like, really, where Barbados? I was like, not people just using the same print and slapping the Caribbean name on it sort of situation. So I really relate to her because I think she is touching on similar topics in the Caribbean, but in her own way.
Yeah.
And she does do performative art in a slightly different way. It's more photography based, where I think it's almost a collaborative combination between me and Alanis's work, where she literally wears these suits that are made from the patterns and then go and put herself in the landscape and have that photograph. And she would have done some work where she was covering monuments in the different states that weren't, with the fabric that weren't necessarily sending the right message anymore. She had like different projects like that with almost like masking those sculptures as well. So I think those three specifically.
I'm a more type of person like to be on Pinterest and I would like save a bunch of pictures kind of thing. But the only person like that coming to mind right now was Terry James Marshall. He was kind of like the blueprint for when I first started the proxy, because at first they were just like silhouetted figures with the blue hair and the red lips. So yeah, I'm more like a picture kind of person.
Yeah.
Like I would save a bunch of references and it would work from them.
Yeah, same. I think it's just the artists that we gravitate towards, or that we can remember offhand.
Yeah, and I do save like a bunch of different like stuff. I follow a bunch of artists on Instagram and yeah, but the name just one thing.
No, I'm worse when I get that
Spot,
question. Yeah. But thank you very much. Do we have any more in person? Yes.
I know that size and style matters in terms of informing the narrative that you're trying to represent. So I want to know, especially as it relates to these pieces over here, which looks at the body again, and you try to bring it to the size of real life. But then you also have the very, very tiny ones, and then you have some that are framed and some that are not, that are on canvas. So I want to know from each of you how the size or what allowed you to choose the specific size for each of the different ones.
Well, majority of my work is usually big. I usually tend to do it bigger because of the type of thing you don't want it to be in your face, kind of feeling like you immersed in piece somewhat. If it could be even bigger, I'll probably do it even bigger. But mainly mine is the ones that like that big, you know. And I tried framing these other ones that are slightly smaller, so I gave them kind of a background and an outlet to shine.
So mine are multiple sizes. Some are framed, some are not. So I guess to touch on the pink phones, I think is a great question. Thank you for letting me. I think size really informs what, like, part of what the concept is. To be honest, like, I'm a sucker for small work. I would paint small for the rest of my life if I could. But I started to branch off into bigger things because I think it's important. For these ones specifically, I don't think it would have been as impactful if they were just a portrait, because at that point, it is just a portrait. This size reflects it being a ping pong. So when you see it, even the specific size of it, it puts you back into, oh, I gotta get my passport photos, I gotta get my visa photos. So they immediately trigger in your brain a relatable memory, moment, or imagery. So I think that is why I specifically make sure that these are the size that they are. And even for us as Bajans, or people that live in Barbados that know these are called ping pongs, other people will still recognize them as identification photos to some extent because they're mainly around this size. For the ones on this wall, the ones that are framed on this one specifically are on paper. I specifically chose paper because I think it gives me the stylistic feel that I need once the piece is finished. The skin specifically gives it almost like a plastic doll-like feel, and that is why strategically I use paper for those.
These were, I view my work as small, although some people consider big. Because especially during college, my portfolio pieces were like 6 by 8 feet. And I think like doing murals on walls that are like 11 feet, 20 feet has really like informed the way in which I work and how big I want to go. But I'm very like OCD when it comes to, if I start one painting one size, every painting in that series will be the same size. So like every painting in that series is 30 by 48. Everyone in this is 30 by 36. But I do want to work bigger, but I need a studio. It's because I work in the corner of my room. But if I had a studio, I probably would do pieces like half the size of this wall kind of thing. Because I'm trying to create like these paradisiacal landscapes. So I want people to be able to feel like they can walk into it kind of thing. And I think I want to start doing installations. So like people actually walk into them eventually.
I have another one here online from Jaden Ward. So do you think Barbados has the potential to be greater in terms of the visual art scene being showcased internationally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's always like potential, and I think it's starting because of social media and because of quarantine. Everybody was at home, so everybody's on their phone all the time, and I think yes, it's up to the individual artist to market himself, to push himself, but I think we should push each other as well. So like I always try to like share other Barbadian artists' work to my stories because I know there are particular people looking at my page. So like, you know, as I said earlier, like a rising tide goes all ships kind of thing. So like help everybody out.
Yeah, I think that's something we want to go into as well as we develop our business. We want to provide opportunities here because we do feel like we have a platform, no matter how small it is, like Alanis mentioned, sharing stuff online because we know certain eyes are on us. But also eventually with our business, we want to be able to provide residencies and stuff for artists here because there is so much potential here, but there's no eyes necessarily on some of that potential. So we try our best with what we have right now to get them there, but eventually we want to push them even further. I think we have the potential, but you just need the people with the potential.
The infrastructure isn't there.
And to push it a little bit further, to not say yeah, here and do what you want with it. Sometimes people need that additional push and that additional working together. I think we need to create a community that is not really reliant on, as an artist, I just home painting and more on, I could message anybody at any time and get advice or get help or just hear a little bit of critique on my work. And I think that also branches off of supporting other people.
Of course.
You know what I mean? It's not only doing work and I'm home and I feel like nothing going on, but are you also putting in the work and going to other people's shows and supporting other people because they might not know about you as yet either. So it's a little bit of 50-50. You got to put in work, but I think people with platforms also have a responsibility to help.
And I think we're seeing like the impact of that, of like, you know, whether you call yourself a collective or not, or like that kind of community spirit and, you know, different artist-led platforms, different artists pushing one another's work, trying to curate group shows like within our networks. I think that, you know, it is happening slowly. The change is happening. So, you know, it's good stuff. I have a question from Regina Best. Hey girls, is there a place for exploring male figures within each of your series?
I mean, mine got named. I feel like I feel like mine actually got named today.
Okay, Akilah.
Initially, I was thinking of veering over there, but then after a while, I was like, this is from my perspective as a female, as a Black female in this particular space. I was like, I feel like reaching too much if I want to reach into that area. So I didn't bother to do that.
I've thought about just making a joke about obviously men before or whatever, but I've also thought about reaching over into the male gaze by having sit-down interviews with actual men that I want to have as the subject of my work because obviously I can't speak on their experience. I think that's why sometimes females are the easier choice or self-portrait are the easier choice because you actually have the subject present as you're painting, as you're informing your work. But I do want to eventually explore other people's narrative, not only males, but also other females besides myself.
I have been thinking about giving my proxies, making them into couples, if that same sex, or giving them a meal. So I might start soon because I have been thinking about doing a new series about, having bubbles alongside Taurus males. So heard it here first.
Stay tuned. Yes, we have another for the audience.
Yeah, I want to commend the three of you for coming together to work together because as we would know in the art spaces, there are a lot of divides, right? And it's very good to see three Black young women work together. Yeah, right? And it was very interesting to see, or I would say uplifting to see the three of you work together on a historic building, which was the post office, and to do such a large scale. I mean, it was terrifying at times to see you guys up on the scaffolding and doing that. But I want to say that it really speaks to the next generation coming up to see three young women at the forefront of such a pivotal art piece. And I want to,
Okay, now you hype me up.
So I want to know, I I want to know what, if you guys are looking at doing more murals across Barbados or across the Caribbean or internationally.
But we might be doing some internationally, but we can't say it yet.
Not just saying, but not saying.
Yeah, look at you, all these little teasers you drop in there.
Just a little taste, you know what I mean?
Thank you. That's all I can say. Thank you very much. I still get my hairs from being up when I was scaffolding.
Oh, we all had that
I mean,
discussion. I say thank you, but it's like not hyping us up for 5 minutes straight. I think the goal for us too, or one of the goals, is to show a positive female relationship as well. I think it's always the assumption that women do not get along, which is not true. So I think we just trying to produce a living example of that females can get along even if you do disagree, you understand each other's viewpoint, even if you don't agree with it, sort of situation.
Yeah, but certainly we don't always agree, but we just gotta be respectful.
We don't, but we're like, if you want to do it, go ahead. This is my doubts about it, but we can let you live your life, and if you need help afterwards, then you could come.
Honest feedback.
Yeah, it's
Just
like,
be
you know what I mean?
honest.
I can't like hold you by a leash and tell you, no, don't do that, because you're not my child, you know what I mean? So I think it's just being respectful of each other's views, regardless of if you believe in them or not.
For sure. Do we have any more questions from the audience or?
Where, good afternoon. What other mediums have you considered telling these stories?
You're not digging into these sketchbooks.
Well, I know Alanis, but we were thinking that it's going like sculptural or more installation type of work.
Well, I consider myself multidisciplinary, even although this year painting really was hitting forefront, to be honest. But usually I would be going from painting to drawing to sculpture to this to that. But I usually go with whatever I think the series and the concept deems necessary. So I've done sculpture before, and it's something that's been in the back of my mind, trying to figure out how I can get certain things in place. So again, Barbados, your resources, like certain things you can't get easy access to. So sometimes you might have an idea and you need to almost put it on pause or be like waiting on the perfect opportunity to present itself in order for you to continue on with that particular subject. But sculpture, and I would say with low relief, because it's not necessarily a sculptural piece that I'm thinking specifically, but something that is three-dimensional, if that makes sense.
You already got.
Yeah, and I got a couple of figures, Mother Sally figures. Have you got questions?
I'm wondering where you have them. I didn't know that you were going that way. I mean, Anna's work is so three-dimensional. When I walk past that, that part just knocks me flat. It's just crying out to be sculpture because it already is. You know?
Yeah. No, the only three-dimensional pieces I have are like these three Mother Sally dolls that I would have done in college. I was examining folklore from like in the past when Mother Sally was only portrayed by men. So it was literally like presented on a shelf that was slightly higher than eye level, which encouraged you to look underneath the piece, and it was on a glass shelf. So like when you look under, it really shows you that they were men. Like even under the facial features and the beards and stuff, it's like, yeah, these is men. People, I just made sure to present them in such a way that I was like, man, let me people under here real quick and see what's going on. It was literally a glass shelf. So then when you look down, you could see like all underneath the skirt.
So what's holding back with sculpture? I mean, if you're thinking sculpturally, you say you can't find materials, you don't have the space, or?
No, that's what I was saying. Let me not say sculptural. I would say something three-dimensional. So it's almost like I want to examine my patterns as fabric and see what I can make out of those fabrics. So there's a lot of different avenues I'm looking to explore, whether that is recreating almost like shaggy bear with my own fabrics, whether that's creating new shirts, which is an interpretation of some of those same tourist shirts we were talking about, whether that's presenting some of the fashion designers in Barbados with the fabrics to see what they can create out of that. That kind of collaboration is also something that I'm looking into as well. But fabric is the main thing that I'm trying to figure out how to facilitate, because print is expensive. And the amount that I would need, I ain't got any money. I already money reside. Exactly right now. I think I need to look maybe possibly overseas to see what the facility to bring in so that I can continue that project.
Already questions? Other materials?
Three-dimensional works. Like
Yeah, I mean,
if you
Other mediums and genres.
other medium.
Well, I'm kind of like a snob, because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be an oil painter, I'm gonna be traditional. I like, them roll their eyes at me all the time. So like using stuff like glitter and even like these little pieces back here, like I have like a million of them and I never show them. But like I really love doing them because it's like a way for me to escape the pain and just like have fun, and I realize that I'm not like overthinking. And they always tell me, girl, like show these stuff, like these are saying something. So I really want to like push that some more. Maybe don't paint for a couple months and see what I create.
So you're welcome. Because honestly, these wouldn't happen in here if me and Anna didn't beg.
Respectful pushing.
Beg.
Well, if we, yes.
After you guys knowing each other for so long and kind of being both very close as friends, but also as business partners, how do you find that you kind of informed each other's works over the years? If at all.
Well, they begged Alanis to show some work. We know that much.
I think she means conceptually, possibly, and
Yeah, but I mean, you guys collaborate like on
I don't know,
every
but
scale, kind of.
Yeah, like as Akilah was saying earlier, like this year has been like last year has been like a really painting year for her. And I joked before I decided like, man, I influenced you to be a painter.
So I am a painter. I just painted this year.
Yeah.
It's just a longer painting state.
I don't know.
I don't think the work is becoming more, you influence each other and becomes more like each other's.
Right.
Because the show works very well. Do you think you hold each other back in any way? If you were living somewhere else, or if you didn't know each other, would you have gone in a different direction? You kind of.
If you can answer, I definitely got an answer.
I don't know, because Anna has, not to answer for you, but Anna has been looking at the body since college, like, and Akilah has been looking at folklore and looking at Barbadian culture. So I think I'm the only one that kind of divert a bit from college, because I was looking at dancehall culture, and now I'm looking at self-discovery. And but I think the way in which we probably do influence each other could be with the colors, could be.
I definitely got an answer, so we can be on.
Okay.
I think my answer is not only painting but figuratively. So yeah, while I am still focused on culture and folklore, it has taken a complete 360 in my opinion. I was looking at stuff like the seascape as puzzles, and now I am examining. So I think I had a broader topic base while I was in college, and how they informed me is learning how to narrow it down, learning how to take off a bite and chew before I try to swallow a certain situation. I think I would have never been painting teachers. You would never catch me dead painting somebody at all. Like the closest you would get to me painting somebody would have been the back of my head. But I was not here for the faces at all. So I think I kind of like put them down for a little bit, and they really consciously was like, yeah, I can paint faces one day. It was just like, I got this idea in my head and let me just see how this pans out. I tend to sketch a lot with collages more like. I would do like a collage and be like, shh, that hit it. And then I would send it to them. I was like, what y'all think? Without giving them necessarily my thoughts on like what direction I want to move in, because I want their organic thoughts on the direction or the imagery that I'm presenting. So I think we inform each other with the words we say and the way we help each other to develop. I don't know if necessarily stylistically or visually, like our styles are necessarily rubbing off on each other. Because even yes, it works cohesively, yes, but like you can still look and see like that's Akilah, that's Alanis, that's Anna. I think it just be growing together. If that's the best way to say. You guys, Anna?
I feel like the way we've ended up taking from each other is probably like as we work together, like for instance, when we start working like stamp on, I remember Alanis had that piece that she technically stamp. When we was looking at images and stamp, she technically stamp and end up incorporating it into work and stuff like that. So it's more like just natural little ideas that we will get from each other that will help you develop in different ways.
Maybe we have time for one more question, if anybody. Yeah.
Okay, do y'all ever suffer from what would be the equivalent to writer's block? And if so, how do you overcome that?
The artist. Yeah, definitely.
Yes, you.
I mean, I've been in it for a long time. But to be honest, I find it best to just keep working on something or the other, or keep looking at different things to get inspired. That's what worked for me so far. Even though I'm still kind of going through it.
And we here, so we can love you too.
If we realize we don't hear from she for a little bit, we be like, what you doing? We start getting on like tutors, like where to work at. Certain situation. I think that's what kind of helps us being accountable to each other for work. But I don't think I've really experienced artist block since I left college. Cause that was the hardest for me, to be honest, because you was moving from an environment with 10 students, who some of them are in here. You was moving from a class of 10 students that was basically having a critique with you at least once a month and telling you, yeah, not working, this, that, to an environment on your own. And I didn't have a studio or a home studio at the time. I was working literally at home on the floor, like in front of my bed. So I was limited when it came to space. It's only last year that I convinced my mother to like dig up the spare bedroom closet and let me build like a home studio sort of situation. So it's between last year and this year that I had an office. But honestly, I don't think I experienced artist block. I just get bored. I think sometimes work needs to be put aside. It needs not to be dwelled on for too long unless you want to be progressing. I literally would start something, I'd be like, yeah, I ready to move on. Like that helped me to spark a different idea, and I think the other idea is going to lead me somewhere else. Because it's not to say that like putting it down is going to destroy it. You know, you're not throwing it away. It's something that you can always come back to. So that's how I look at it. I just be like, no, but I know I'm working on it anyways. Like even if somebody know that I'm working on it, I'm accountable to myself. So it's not like if I say I start it now and I can finish it next week. I can just be like, oh well, I can put it on and start something else.
I mean, I think the biggest artist what I had was when leaving college. For a couple of months, like I literally just used to be in bed like all day doing nothing. But I try to, if I have artist what I try to write a lot. I don't like to sketch, so I write. And I don't think, if I start, I can't do what Akilah does. Like, I can't start something like, oh well, watch out. If I start something, I'll finish. I would never finish it. And usually for that painting took like 2 weeks. I work pretty fast. So like I have to work to this finish. I can't put it down. I have a lot of pieces right now put down that I probably would never go back to. And that, so I gotta know myself and I gotta know that if I start, I gotta finish.
Yeah, so that's a nice note to end on, because I think again we're bringing it back to this idea of like community and supporting one another as artists, as women, as Caribbean creatives, and I think that a lot of your answers have really embodied that. And yeah, I just think that's a nice note to end on. Big up yourselves. Thank you everybody for coming. We can all continue the conversation as we close up. And remember that tomorrow, if anybody is free, Frame and Art is having their spring pop-up shop here from 9 till 5, so you can pass through. And there'll be some really great jewelry and designer pieces from Barbadian makers and designers on show.
I will share as well.
All right, and thank you very much, everybody, and get home safe.
Thank you.